Hello, friends. Welcome back to the Keisha Tower Show. Today, I'm going to be talking about a very hard thing, and I really don't know how I'm going to get through this one. I'm going to talk about mine and Scott's pending divorce. This is going to be strictly about us and our divorce, and obviously, as you hopefully heard from the intro, I'm not gonna bash him, I'm not gonna talk shit about him. I'm going to choose my words very wisely when I discuss this topic. And just jumping in. No one tells you how hard it is to leave someone that you still actively love, but you know that they are not the person for you. Of course. That is so difficult. This has been one of, if not the most challenging thing I have ever done in my whole life. And Scott is a genuinely nice dude. He is fun. He gets along with everyone. We, in this moment, just are not meant to be together. And I hate it so much. So we got together 20 years ago. He lived next door to my best friend at the time. I was 15, and even before we got together, we knew each other for a couple of years before we got together, because I would go over to my friend's house, and she had older brothers, and all of her neighbors were older, and we just always kind of hung out and stuff. And I don't know, I was just as we got a little bit, obviously I was 15, he was 17. As we got a little bit older, out of 12 and 13, I just gravitated towards him, and I don't know, we just had, I guess, a typical high school sweetheart relationship. And after I graduated high school, we pretty quickly moved out and bought a house together, and I finished school, and then we got married, and then we had kids, and now here we are finishing it out with getting a divorce. Why are we getting a divorce? So Scott and I separated in March of this year, so March of 2023, very beginning of March. I asked for it. Prior to that, we had gone to couples therapy for 9 months, and I arrived at a separation. Reasons we were in therapy. Emotional connection was lacking, big time. I think we all just kind of have this understanding that if you live together and share a bed, that you instantly have an emotional connection, and that's not the case at all. lose an emotional connection, I believe other connections are not far behind. Obviously physical, like, right, it's hard to kind of have physical attraction and affection with someone if the emotional piece isn't there. At least I'll speak for myself. So I had really been feeling off in the relationship, honestly, since 2018, and Scott is very aware of, I'm sorry, I'm lying to you, 2016. And Scott is very aware of this. We have talked about and addressed in therapy, and even prior to therapy, we were aware. And to be honest, it's been ongoing our entire relationship, but it wasn't really until I started going to therapy and started to wake up and started to kind of demand more, that it became a glaring issue on our relationship. So, I mean, our life, you know, we have a life before kids and we have a life after kids. And our life before kids was pretty much a party, 24/7. Even before we had moved out on our own, we still partied a lot, drank a lot. I mean, outside of drinking, we just went out and did stuff a lot. And even especially when we moved out. So we moved out really young. Our first thing, we bought a house. I was 20, he was 22. You know, it was very nice for us in that moment. And we had like a nice garage. Like we had a great yard for our needs and what we needed. And we always had people over. I mean, it was just, what else were we gonna do, right? Like, we both worked. I went to school. I finished school during all this time, but we were always just kind of like, I would say kind of both of us together, probably more so than him. We're kind of like the life of the party. And we just always, like I said, we had a space, whereas other people didn't have the space. So everybody just kind of naturally ended up at our house, and we were fine with that. And looking back now, knowing what I know now, because, right, I didn't have insight about situations and stuff then. Like, I think a lot of people drink for a couple of different reasons. I found myself drinking out of boredom a lot. Just didn't have anything to do, so it's like, all right, let's pop open a beer, or okay, let's like make some margaritas or something like that. And then it was just like, even after that, you could just, like, the conversation flowed, and the conversation was like, okay, like, everything feels a little, like, easier with a drink or two, right? So I think even before I realized, like, we were kind of, even at that point before kids, kind of like drinking together to like have a conversation, or we would just, you know, watch TV, and you know, we kind of had Sundays and we'd watch TV and just chill and not talk, like, and I got it for the most part, like, I understood, but I think once I became a mom and my attention was spread out more than what I had originally anticipated, and then I started to demand more, it really took a toll on our relationship. And I don't regret how anything happened, because I know that no matter what, and as bad as it sucks right now, Like, this is where we're supposed to be, no matter how this ends. Like, I don't know, in the whole grand scheme of things, that this is where we are supposed to be in our lives. After I had Raylan, which is the oldest, she's almost 9 in August. I went through some pretty bad mental health shit. If you've listened at all before to any of the Kentucky Mama podcasts, it's the older podcast, any of those episodes. I talk about, I had a lot of postpartum depression, postpartum anxiety, had postpartum OCD, postpartum psychosis, any type of postpartum mood disorder you could have, I had. And I really think by me becoming a mom, it forced all of my suppressed emotions and suppressed trauma to come to light. When Raylan was 6 months old, I started therapy because I was just like crying nonstop. But at that point, my postpartum shit had peaked big time. I was very ragey. I was very mean. I was very disconnected from everyone and everything. And I started going to therapy. And as I started my therapy journey, I could tell, I knew that it was going to be the end of me and Scott. I knew it. Because I knew emotionally and mentally and spiritually, he was never going to be willing to get on my level. This is not a bad thing. Like, Scott is who he is. Like, I think for a long time I wanted him to change, and that's not fair. It's not fair to ask the person you love to change into someone they're not. It's not fair. And I thought that was the answer for a really long time. And I think the more insight that I gained in therapy, every session I went, I could feel that me and Scott weren't meant to be together. There was a time when I remember when I realized that there was a real problem in our relationship. I was pregnant with Briar. So this was 2016. I was pregnant, I was maybe 18, 20 weeks, somewhere around that halfway mark. Pregnant with Briar, and I had Raylan at home, and she was 18 months at that point, maybe closer to 2, probably closer to 2. And there were 6 weekends in a row where he decided he did not want to be at the house. He chose going out and being with friends over being at home with us. And I very distinctly remember having the conversation with him, like, bro, if this is the life you want, like, I realize this is who we were prior to kids. I realize it. I realize it. I acknowledge it. And that was where I wanted him to change. I wanted him to want to be at home with me and want to be at home with the kids. And that's not to say he doesn't, because he does. He takes care of his kids. Like, I'm not bashing him at all. But these are just And I'm sure if he made a podcast about me, he could tell you all the things I fucked up about. So maybe he'll come on here one day and tell you everything I fucked up about. Because I'm not perfect by any means. I will tell you my fuck ups for sure during this. But I just remember that conversation, and I remember him being like, what do you mean? Like, I'm here Monday through Friday with you and them. I deserve to go out on the weekends. And I'm not saying he didn't. And I think anyone that knows he and I and the relationship that we had, I'd be willing to say 80% of the time he got to do whatever the fuck he wanted. And this was the largest argument and reoccurring argument in our relationship was he wanted to go out and do things and I wanted to stay home. And it was almost something we weren't willing to compromise on. It's hard to compromise on things when you're not feeling heard, or you're not feeling seen, or you're not feeling safe. And right, just like the definition of safe for me is just like emotionally safe and mentally safe. And you know, there were lots of blow-ups that we had. We did not argue often, but when we did, it was just always about the lack of emotions and lack of just me not being heard or seen. And we just stayed stuck there. We stayed very stuck there. We are stuck there. And I just wanted Scott to be home with me. And I wanted Scott to want to be home with me. I didn't want to have to ask him to be home with me. I just wanted him to want to be home with me. And as I was going through therapy and discussing these things, I just kept waking up to my own self a little bit more. And I just thought maybe if I was different, maybe I could want to go out. Maybe I could want to do these things. But I couldn't. And I think he thought, like, maybe I could stay at home. Maybe I could do some things that she liked. Maybe we could figure this out. And ultimately, it just wasn't the case. The older I got, the less I started to drink. Just because I was noticing really negative effects that it was having on my body and on my mind. And I held on to drinking for longer than I wanted to, because I knew the moment that I stopped drinking, there would be no more me and Scott. And I kept trying to just like figure it out. Like, how can I make this work? How could I make this man that I've loved for 20 years, how can I make it work with him? And I just realized all I've been doing is betraying myself. I've just been betraying myself, trying to save the relationship. I wanted to stop drinking for a really long time. And Scott supported me the best way that he could. But it wasn't enough, and that's okay. It's honestly okay. I think I had to get to a point where I was really okay with the direction my life was going to change whenever I stopped drinking, because I knew it would be the end of me and Scott. I absolutely knew it. It was the last connection that we had. There was nothing emotional. There was nothing physical. There was nothing mental. There was nothing spiritual. There was nothing. I stopped drinking in September of 2022, and then Scott and I separated in March of 2023. And I honestly can't believe that after 20 years we're here, that we I'm sad that we couldn't figure it out. Because I feel like we tried. I think therapy, when we were in therapy, it really opened my eyes up to the language that I needed to use with a partner in general. And that the things I was asking for were basic needs, and they were not being met. And again, this does not mean Scott is a bad person, because he sat right there with me on that couch as we tried to figure our shit out. I think we both thought that when we started therapy, it was going to be a road to fix our marriage. And it ended up being the opposite. As we started talking about situations and events and how we felt, it just became really clear that we were in different books, honestly. And by the time we started therapy, I think we started in July of 2022, I was already checked out. I had asked him too many times for too many things. And when they are continually not met, you just start to fucking shut off and shut out and disconnect. And even as he was actively trying to do what our therapist had recommended, I couldn't even let it happen because I was too far gone already. I was too far checked out from the relationship. Because these issues have not only been happening since 2016, but honestly, our entire relationship. I ended up finding very recently, a couple weeks ago, I ended up finding letters that Scott for some reason kept. And they weren't nice, so I was surprised that he kept them. Maybe he wanted to show me one day that I was a bitch, I don't know. But it was me begging for his attention in 2006, which was the year I graduated high school. So 17 years ago. Me begging him to put me first and make me a priority And in 2006, I was a very unhealed person. I was scared to death to lose that man because he was the first thing that had ever been constant in my life, and he felt safe in that moment. He showed up for me in ways that other people couldn't, and he did things for me that other people couldn't. But even 17 years ago, I was still begging him for attention. I ended up finding journals not long after from 2020. Okay, like, let's take a deep breath and think about this. Like, 2020, when we were fucking stuck in the house together and I'm still begging him to make me a priority. Do I need too much attention? Possibly. And I'm okay admitting that. I think for a long time I played it off that I was like super low maintenance and, you know, give me chicken wings and beer and I'm happy. And I think that was before I really tapped into like what I really, really needed on an emotional level. Like I want to have deep, emotional, meaningful conversations. I want to feel loved and seen, and that was not happening in my relationship. Now, that does not mean that Scott was not doing that at moments, because of course he was. I just think we became really disconnected towards the end, and I'm not saying this is Scott's fault at all, because I know that there were things that I was not willing to compromise on. Especially in the start of my drinking or non-drinking journey. I isolated big time because I was scared to death. And Scott supported me the best way that he knew how, but it just still felt very scary. And I felt like I needed to stay inside even more than what I already was in order to avoid slipping up. And it was just, I don't know, it was just a culmination of so many things. I think it was almost serendipitous that I found that letter from 2006. Because 2 days later, I asked him for a divorce. And I asked him for a divorce because in our separation, we agreed that it was going to be a 6-month trial to like figure it out. And in the 3 months so far, nothing has changed. And I know in the next 3 months, nothing else is going to change. We're not actively fighting for each other. It's just so hard. We've had friends that have went through divorce and like, I literally, like, I almost feel bad because I know that I did not have the capacity to be there for them in the way that they needed, guy or girl. Because you just truly, it's just one of those things where you don't understand until you go through it. Like, we've had multiple friends at this point in life, obviously, and, you know, it's like, oh, you're getting a divorce, I feel really sorry for you. Let me still go home to my husband or wife and, like, be okay. I don't know what else I would have done in that point to offer support. I'm just like, I think I really took for granted their experience of divorce and maybe how I could have showed up for them. Again, I'm not even sure that I had the capacity to do that. Because I think, like I said, you just go home to your spouse and you're like, oh man, it really sucks they're getting a divorce. Like, that will never happen to us. Yet here we are. I think the worst part is, like, we're both genuinely good people. Like, nothing traumatically bad happened. Like, yes, needs weren't being met, like, obviously over a certain amount of time. That's why we're not here. Like, little small things obviously add up over time. And I'm not wishing that there was a big traumatic event to make it happen. And I'm not comparing in the least. But I'm having a hard time just, like, completely detaching. I don't know how. You know it's the best thing for you, and I don't know how. How do you detach from someone that you actively and genuinely love, but you can't be married to them anymore? I don't get it. I know how we're here. I just explained to you how we're here. Fuck, it sucks. So bad. So bad. And I don't know. I don't know what the future holds for either of us. I would just say that I will always wish him well. I need him well for my kids. I need him happy for my kids. I will never wish anything bad on him. We still talk almost daily, and it is very much only about the kids. And I hope that we are able to always stay civil and put our kids first, always. I know there will be rocky times. It's not always going to be perfect. Even in 3 months so far, it's not been, the communication between us has not been terrible. We have not gotten arguments, and I don't think we want to, because what's the point? Like, what's the point now? Like, we just have our kids to worry about, like. I just hope, and I know a year from now, I can't even imagine what our lives look like. I know it will be good, and I know it will be okay. But right now, I am in the thick of the fucking suck. Like, the thick of it. And I'm not saying that Scott isn't, because he very well could be. Like, I'd have to imagine he's hurting it to some capacity. Because he no longer lives here. He lives somewhere else. He doesn't see his kids all the time, but anytime he calls, he can come get them whenever he wants. Like, I just hope that I hope for everybody, not even just us. Like, I just hope that we can always have the integrity in ourselves to put our kids first and put our kids' needs first over our own and over any situation that arises between us. And I'm confident he probably feels the same because we've semi-talked about it. Emotions are fucking stupid, y'all. Fucking stupid. I just want to bypass them. I just want to not feel. And this is where I know with every bone in my body that I could not be drinking right now because I would drink my fucking self stupid. I know that I would drink myself so goddamn drunk so I would not have to feel every fucking emotion because that's how I drink. I drink to numb. And I can't do that. I cannot do that and be a present parent or a good parent at all. I knew that was going to be a rough one. So yeah, that's where we are right now. Again, in the thick of it. 1 year from now, who knows what our lives look like. I hope that we both continue to be happy and remain happy and figure our shit out and be there for our kids because that's all that matters. Like, it's literally all that matters. I wish I had something positive to say now. I'm about to go work out, so I wanted to get this cry out before I worked out, so that's great. I don't know when I'm going to release this one. I was going to take my phone, but it's recording. Today is, I don't know, June 4th or 5th, I think. This may be one of the last ones I release, so we'll see about it. Okay. I hope you all have a great day or night, whatever time you're listening, and tune in next time. See ya.